This video is sponsored by App Bounty. Sponsorships help out a ton, so I want to thank them for supporting me as a creator. App Bounty is a phone app where you can discover other awesome apps and earn gift cards in the process, like for getting new games on Steam, Nintendo eShop, etc. To start, you click the link in the description and download the app. When it asks, be sure to use the code SwankyBox so you can earn some free points. I recommend going to the Play and Earn section since you can try out new games and earn points for playing them. The more you try and the longer you play, the more points you earn. You can then trade those points in for tons of different gift cards. Once again, you can find a link in the description to get the app, and a big thank you to App Bounty for their support. For the past month, I've been teetering on the edge of my seat waiting for all of it to come together. Every part of the Five Nights at Freddy's puzzle laid out before me, and totally binging on any content that pops up relative to the lore. I released 2 videos encompassing the extent of my thoughts for my initial mind dump of Ultimate Custom Night. And as someone who loves diving into the lore behind games, I equally love hearing other people talk about them. Now, we've had a multitude of theories pop up on YouTube, Reddit, in wiki discussions, on Steam forums, and in so many more places. And being from the YouTube space, I always appreciate the analytical views of my peers the most. I'm not sure if it's just the idea of these theories coming to life in video form, or more so the rekindling of my childhood, where I would spend hours watching documentaries on mysteries and other horrifying things. But I binge. I binge hard. I always love it when my buddies over at Treesicle upload their thoughts around the same time as me, because it's neat to see how the topic can be perceived from different angles. And then of course we have Dawko as well, who is someone I had the pleasure of collaborating with a few years back. Now, watching him grind through Ultimate Custom Night was absolutely gut-wrenching, and I feared for his sanity. But it was pretty awesome seeing him clear the dreaded 50-20 night. He completed it and then literally exploded into a sea of emotions. That moment alone took me back to when the first dreaded 20x4 night was cleared. It's been a trip. But when it comes to trying to piece together Five Nights at Freddy's lore, and honestly probably what inspired me to start delving into the lore of FNAF, one person immediately comes to mind. And that's Matthew Patrick of the Game Theorists. The Game Theorists have literally made so much Five Nights at Freddy's content that I can comfortably say that if all the cutscenes in Metal Gear Solid 4 were replaced with these animatronic lore dumps, it would fill those hefty 7.5 hours pretty darn well. But with this statement, you're probably wondering about the title of this video. And before I dive into any of that, first you need to know that Matt is someone I certainly respect. He was one of the 3 YouTubers who got me back into this whole YouTube thing, and I actually had the pleasure of working with him for about a month. But I say all of this because I want you to know that me commenting on another person's theory is not me putting them down or anything negative. It's all merely for the sake of discussion. And even though this video will get dislikes for the general idea of commenting on someone else's work, I thought it was important to say that. Okay, now that that's out of the way, let's talk some lore. The reason this video even exists is because I'm someone who has pretty much watched all of Matt's Five Nights at Freddy's content. Back when Markiplier was playing it years ago, I naturally migrated over to the Game Theorists to see the breakdown of the story that I had missed. And it's because of this legacy of watching video after video of creepy animatronic lore that I've reached the point I'm at now. A point where I'm not too satisfied where the theory trail is heading. Now, don't get me wrong, I've always been impressed with the deductions and logic that goes into everything Matt has done with Five Nights at Freddy's. But if these last 2 videos are truly the end of his Five Nights at Freddy's videos, I think I'm going to feel a little bit off. Not because I think the videos aren't well made or thought out, but because I feel the foundation they are set up on is extremely unstable and it's already showing its cracks. This past Sunday, Matt and his team had uploaded Game Theory. We were right all along, which breaks down the lore to Ultimate Custom Night in a way that makes sense. Given the pieces that are in play, Matt, like many others, determined that William Afton was stuck in a repeating nightmare within hell, whereas the creepy demon-faced child thingy was the one holding him in this torturous limbo. And that's all fine and well. Because of the things covered, I don't think he's wrong at all. It aligns with what the internet, myself included, was generally thinking about what was taking place. And all of this was fine until the concept of the crying child was brought up again, where Matt reinstated that the bite victim was Michael Afton. And I just can't believe that. It doesn't logically add up given the age discrepancies between the games and when they took place. And ultimately, with Matt's final timeline being released next week, if this one detail is set in stone, then that means the entire timeline is going to be laid out with that being the linked factor. The theory and timeline start with that identity in place, and with what I personally believe is a mislabel for a character. Now, immediately, a lot of you may be thinking, who cares, it's just a video. I'll probably make another one anyways. And while that last part may be true, I think part of the reason I do care is because the series is at a place where Scott is satisfied with the lore. Regardless of people clearing 50/20 night, there won't be anything additional. So given that, and given the amount of time and energy that went into crafting Matt's upcoming timeline, I feel like it won't ever sit right if Michael Afton being the bite victim is a focal point. For those of us who have been around for the entire ride, I don't know how to feel about it. A lot of people won't understand that, but I think it's still important to state. In my last video, I explained a few different angles to how we could be playing as William or even Michael in Ultimate Custom Night, but ultimately felt William was the stronger choice. I strongly believe Michael is not the bite victim, simply based on his age alone. I believe Michael to be the older brother with a foxy mask, and even with that said, I don't believe we play as Michael in Five Nights at Freddy's 4 either. If Michael is the brother with the mask, then we can already see how tall he is compared to his younger brother. Yet the player in Five Nights at Freddy's 4 is only as tall as the door handles in the house. As we run to the door, we can see that we are still a child. I think it'd be weird to introduce the brother as an initial antagonist and then write him out of the story. When the younger brother is being carried to his inevitable bite, we can also see shadowy versions of Freddy and Bonnie in the background behind a table, almost as if they were watching the bite victim being led to his execution. In the eyes of a child, these terrifying animatronics were twice as gruesome from his point of view. The house and the cutscenes in the house we play in aren't the same place, but they do appear to still be linked to sister location. Now, majority of this information you probably already know, but I think the lens in which we perceive it changes everything. To the child, these nightmares were real even though no one else believed him. And what's terrifying about this is that what we're experiencing in Five Nights at Freddy's 4 could very well be the same thing William is experiencing in Ultimate Custom Night. The house, these rooms, the random glimpses of hospital equipment alongside the bed. I think the Five Nights at Freddy's 4 child was stuck in his own limbo. The bite didn't kill him, but it put him into a coma. He was unconscious to the outside world, but within his head was a never-ending nightmare. One in which he was never safe from any angle. He was in a constant state of fear, and yet no one could help him. When the night was over, the next one simply began. The cutscenes we see were merely the steps that led up to the limbo this child existed in. The older brother, who led the charge with taking the bite victim to his untimely chomp, was the one we are with in the end. The gray text lets us know he is the first one who is talking, and he is sorry for everything that he has done, even though he knows his brother probably can't hear him. When he leaves though, that's when William steps in. He can put him back together. He can make everything right again. And so, he kills his son. That's why the heart rate monitor sound plays. It goes flat because William Afton ended his son's life. He knows that he can preserve his son within an animatronic shell, similar to how Baby was an embodiment of Elizabeth. And it's unknown whether or not Michael actually knew it was William who had killed the bite victim. When the bite victim died, the guilt from this incident could have been what set Michael into motion when he needed to save his sister. It could have also been recurring nightmares, which I'll touch on in a little bit. Although this venture in general almost seemed like William Afton was sending his son to his own death, given the deadly animatronics that reside in sister location, given the final ending to the game. Which takes us back to Ultimate Custom Night. Michael Afton cleansed his own sins by burning himself in Five Nights at Freddy's 6. He was possibly the security guard in all the other establishments, under fake names post-sister locations ending, in an attempt to fix the problems caused by his father in each establishment. He had to change names because former employees aren't allowed to work at the company again. Any sane person would just leave, but he stays. I strongly believe that William placed the bite victim within Fredbear, and that's entirely why Fredbear is inaccessible during Ultimate Custom Night, minus summoning him by death coining Golden Freddy. Although this takes us to another crazy debate. Is Golden Freddy and Fredbear the same character? A lot of people think they are based on the Fredbear jump scare in Ultimate Custom Night, but I think the opposite. The bite victim has to be living on in a character. It seems oddly fitting to be placed in the animatronic that put him on his deathbed. But based on the Logbook solution, the name Cassidy from the Fourth Closet novel pops up. And that's one of the reasons why I think we're dealing with two different animatronics here. Fredbear attacks you when you death coin Golden Freddy, because Golden Freddy is the only spirit who has yet to be free. The crying child, aka the bite victim, is exactly where he wants to be. He's a vengeful spirit who wants to punish his father for killing him, because he was never given the chance to recover from his coma. He's the one who shouldn't have been killed. By this point in the series though, majority of the animatronics present here are just lingering memories from the past. All except for Cassidy, who was never truly set free. Death cornering her is the most heartless thing that can be done in Ultimate Custom Night, because she never had the chance to pass on. It's as if William can just ignore her, but Fredbear finally appears in defense to reset the cycle, to punish his father for trying to silence her once again. Now, at this point you might be thinking, but what about the rest of the logbook? It obviously belonged to Mike, and all the questions in it seem like they are directed towards the crying child from Five Nights at Freddy's 4. Shouldn't that be enough to verify they are the same person? And this is what takes us back to the conundrum with MatPat's theory. In my last video I mentioned if we were the crying child, we wouldn't be old enough to work in the establishment until we were way older. The games happen too quickly in succession, and a minor wouldn't be able to work extremely late hours or even over a certain amount of hours in a week. However, the older brother, who was probably in high school, would be able to, assuming he graduated not long afterwards. But beyond this, the questions in the book definitely seem directed towards the crying child, and someone who lost their memory, which is what would happen if you damage your frontal lobe. But it makes you wonder if these questions were written in the logbook specifically because Michael was trying to connect with the spirit of his younger brother. If Michael knew his brother was trapped in an animatronic, there's still no way Michael could know if his brother remembered who they were, or if they simply became an enigma. Perhaps leaving this logbook at the various locations overnight would hopefully yield a response by the next shift. It's also possible that it's the bite victim, reaching out with rhetorical questions because they can't remember who they are, which would explain why the phrase "my name" is written but is never finished, almost like the thought is lost before it is fully explained. A lot of people online have also suggested that FNAF 4's animatronics are nightmares that are occurring with Michael Afton, the older brother, because of the guilt of killing his younger brother. Nightmare Fredbear levels up into Nightmare once the bite victim passes on, and guilt consumes Michael. And that's why I can't sit comfortably in terms of accepting that the bite victim is Michael Afton. Now, many of you may disagree with me on this, and that's entirely okay. That's part of the charm in debating the different possibilities. For me though, no matter how well things are strung together, I will always have a part of me who just can't accept the fact that someone who completely died is the protagonist. I understand they dodged death with the scooper, but I always felt like that was because not all of Ennard left Michael. And in some ways, it was sort of poetic, because at that moment, every known member of Afton's family we've encountered was now part robot. And also to clear things up, since someone brought it to my attention, the robotic voice of Michael at the end of Sister Location was actually a fluke, as Scott confirmed the voice wasn't actually supposed to sound like it was powering down. That wasn't something I knew, so thanks for sharing it in the comments. But with all that said, what are your thoughts? Do you think Michael Afton is the bite victim or the brother? What about the logbook conclusion? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And as a last note, I highly recommend checking out some of Dawko's theory breakdowns to really get your gears going. And with that, thanks for tuning in to this lore ultimatum. Five Nights at Freddy's may finally be done now that Scott is happy with where the lore is, but I wonder what the future will hold. Anyways, thanks for watching guys and gals, and until my next video, cheers.